There is a specific kind of pain that almost no one sees. It does not scream. It does not break things. It does not collapse in public. It waits. It waits beside a phone that stays dark. It waits inside half-written messages that never get sent. It waits in the ache of being almost chosen, almost answered, almost loved in the way you needed. And the worst part is not even the silence. It is the confusion. Because one moment they felt close, warm, open, real. Their eyes softened. Their voice carried something honest. They let you in just enough to make your nervous system believe safety had finally arrived. And then, suddenly, they pulled back. Slower replies, colder energy, distance where intimacy used to breathe. And that is when your mind began to burn. What changed? What did I do? Why do they care one day and disappear the next? Why does loving them feel like trying to hold water in your hands? So you chased. Not because you were weak, because you were wounded. Because when someone activates your hope and then withdraws, it does something violent to the human brain. Your amygdala reads the distance like danger. Your cortisol rises. Your thoughts become louder, faster, sharper. And dopamine, the same chemical tied to craving and reward, starts turning their inconsistency into an obsession. You do not just miss them. You become chemically hooked on the relief of maybe getting them back. That is why chasing an avoidant feels so irresistible, and that is exactly why it destroys you. Here is the brutal truth no one wants to say out loud. The more you chase an avoidant, the less safe they feel with you. Not because you are too much, not because your love is wrong, but because your pursuit collides with the exact thing their nervous system has spent years learning to fear: emotional engulfment. When you push for clarity, they feel pressure. When you reach for reassurance, they feel responsibility. When you try to close the distance, their body interprets it as a loss of control. And in that moment, they do not stop because they stopped caring. They stop because they are overwhelmed. That is the part people misunderstand. Avoidants are not always cold in the way people think. Many of them feel deeply, sometimes too deeply, but their relationship with emotion is not soft and flowing. It is crowded, electric, threatening. Intimacy does not just awaken love in them, it awakens exposure, dependency, the possibility of being needed, the possibility of failing, the possibility of losing themselves inside someone else's emotional hunger. So when feelings rise, their system does not say, "This is connection." It says, "This is danger." And once that alarm goes off, they do what they have always done. They detach. They minimize. They rationalize. They go quiet. They make you feel like you imagined the whole thing, not because nothing was there, because too much was there. This is why chasing them always backfires. You think you are fighting for connection, but to them, it feels like being cornered by it. The message you send at midnight because you cannot take the uncertainty anymore? To you, it is honesty. To them, it is weight. The long paragraph explaining how hurt you are? To you, it is vulnerability. To them, it is emotional demand. The constant checking, the need for definition, the attempt to force the truth into the open. To you, it feels necessary. To them, it feels invasive. And the tragedy is that the harder you try to get close, the faster they disappear into themselves. Because avoidant attachment is not built on a lack of feeling. It is built on a fear of what feeling will require. Read that again in your soul. They are not always running from you. They are running from the internal flood you awaken in them. And if you do not understand that, you will keep making the same mistake. You will keep interpreting withdrawal as something to fix with more effort, more softness, more patience, more proof, more pursuit. But your chasing does not calm the storm. It becomes part of it. There is one core concept you have to understand if you ever want to stop bleeding inside this pattern. Silence. Not manipulative silence. Not performative silence. Not silence as a game. Silence as self-respect. Silence as nervous system regulation. Silence as the moment you stop throwing your soul at a closed door. Because when you stop chasing, something powerful happens. First, your body panics. Of course it does. You are interrupting an addiction cycle. You are refusing the urge to reach for the very person who triggered the wound. Your brain hates that at first. It will beg you to check their story, to reread old messages, to send one final text that sounds casual but is secretly carrying all your hope. It will tell you silence means losing them. It will tell you not reaching out means the connection dies. But that is the voice of fear, not truth. Because silence does something your chasing never could. It reveals reality. When you stop flooding the connection with your energy, you finally get to see what they do with the space. Do they notice? Do they reach? Do they feel your absence? Do they step forward when you stop dragging the entire relationship behind you? That is information. Sacred information. And most people are terrified of receiving it, because deep down, they know what it might say. That they were the one keeping the whole thing alive. That the chemistry was real, but the reciprocity was not. That the bond felt deep because they were pouring depth into it. This is why people keep chasing. Not because chasing works, but because stopping forces them to face the truth. And truth is colder than hope. But truth sets you free. Imagine the avoidant after intimacy begins to deepen. At first, they lean in. They text more. They remember details. They seem present, maybe even tender. You relax. Your heart opens. You start imagining consistency. You begin to trust the pattern. Then something shifts. Maybe you ask for more. Maybe they sense your attachment growing. Maybe the closeness itself becomes too real. Now their nervous system starts to contract. Cortisol rises. Their body feels the pressure before their mind can explain it. They may not even consciously know why they feel like pulling away. They just know that the warmth has become heat, and the heat feels like threat. So they create space. They take longer to reply. They become vague. They focus on work, stress, timing, anything but the emotional truth. They tell themselves they need room. They tell themselves you are asking for too much. They tell themselves something is off. This is where you usually enter with love in your hands and panic in your chest. You notice the distance. Your own nervous system goes into alarm. You try to restore the bond. You become sweeter, more available, more understanding. Or maybe more emotional, more direct, more desperate for answers. But every move you make says the same thing to them. I need something from you right now. And the avoidant hears that not as romance, but as pressure. So they pull back more. Now you are chasing harder because they are slipping further. And they are slipping further because you are chasing harder. This is the trap. This is the dance that makes you lose yourself. And what makes it so cruel is that part of them does miss you while they are disappearing. Part of them does think about you. Late at night, when the noise settles, they remember your warmth, the steadiness of your attention, the softness in your eyes. They replay moments they acted unaffected by. They feel the absence, but instead of moving toward it, they often sit inside it. Avoidants are strange that way. They can ache and still do nothing. They can miss you and still not message. They can care and still remain still. Because caring is not the problem. Activation is. To reach out means to feel. To feel means to risk. To risk means to lose control. So they wait. And if you keep chasing, they never have to face the full weight of your absence. They never have to confront what life feels like without your energy cushioning the distance. Your pursuit keeps them emotionally fed without requiring emotional bravery. Do you understand how devastating that is? Every time you chase, you make it easier for them to avoid themselves. You become the bridge. You become the regulator. You become the one carrying the tension neither of you can bear. And that feels like love to you because it is effort. But effort is not always love. Sometimes it is self-abandonment in a beautiful disguise. The power begins to shift the moment you stop making your worth available on demand. Not in a cruel way, not to punish, not to prove a point, but because your energy is not meant to be used as life support for someone who refuses to meet you. When you become non-reactive, the dynamic changes. Not robotic, not numb, non-reactive. That means you feel the trigger, but you do not become it. You feel the urge, but you do not obey it. You feel the silence, but you do not immediately rush in to fill it. And for an avoidant, that is unfamiliar, because now there is space. Now there is contrast. Now there is no emotional net waiting beneath their withdrawal. And suddenly, what they pushed away can become what they start to feel. Your absence, your steadiness, your refusal to collapse. That is when many of them begin circling back. Not always with grand declarations, sometimes with small things. A message, a reaction, a random memory, a subtle re-entry. They test the door. They check if access is still available. They look for the energy they are used to receiving. And this is where so many people ruin their transformation. Because the moment the avoidant returns, all the old chemistry comes roaring back. Dopamine spikes. Hope wakes up. The body trembles with relief. You think, finally, they missed me. They care. This means it is changing. Maybe, but maybe not. Because someone missing your presence is not the same as someone being capable of healthy intimacy. And if you break your new pattern too soon, if you rush back into over-giving, over-explaining, over-accommodating, you will rebuild the same prison with your own hands. This is the warning. Do not confuse re-entry with repair. Do not confuse attention with intention. Do not confuse their moment of longing with your long-term security. If the pattern has not changed, the ending will not change either. And the pattern is not changed by how intensely they return. It is changed by how consistently they remain, how honestly they communicate, how willingly they tolerate closeness without punishing you for needing it, how much responsibility they take for the distance they create. Anything less is just another loop wearing a new face. You have to stop being hypnotized by intermittent tenderness. That one soft message, that one vulnerable night, that one time they almost opened up. Almost is the word that has stolen years from people like you. Almost committed, almost available, almost ready. Almost loving you in a way that could be lived in, not just felt in flashes. But your life cannot be built on almost. Your nervous system cannot heal inside almost. Your self-worth cannot survive worshiping potential. There comes a moment in this journey where the deepest healing is not getting the avoidant to chase you. It is no longer needing them to. That is the real power shift. Not making them obsessed, not making them regret it, not becoming some untouchable mystery they suddenly fear losing. No, the shift is quieter than that, stronger than that. It is when you finally realize that your value was never hidden inside their ability to stay. Their withdrawal was never a verdict on your lovability. It was a revelation of their capacity, and those are not the same thing. You could be the most emotionally intelligent, patient, radiant person in the world, and someone who is terrified of intimacy would still feel threatened by what you offer. Not because you are wrong for wanting closeness, but because closeness asks them to face rooms inside themselves they have spent a lifetime keeping locked. You were not rejected because you were too much. You were met by someone for whom real love felt like too much reality. That is different. And when that truth lands, something in you begins to unhook. You stop taking their distance personally. You stop auditioning for basic care. You stop translating crumbs into meaning. You stop calling pain chemistry. You stop confusing anxiety with love. You become still. And in that stillness, you begin to hear your own life again, your own body, your own standards, your own grief, your own hunger for something honest. You begin to understand that chasing them was never just about them. It was also about the part of you that believed love had to be earned through persistence, the part of you that thought being chosen required proving, the part of you that equated emotional unavailability with depth because chaos felt familiar. That part deserves compassion, but it does not deserve control. You are allowed to outgrow the version of you that thought suffering was devotion. You are allowed to become someone who does not run after mixed signals, someone who lets inconsistency eliminate itself, someone who can feel longing without kneeling to it. Someone who understands that real power is not in getting them back, it is in getting yourself back. Your sleep back, your appetite back, your focus back, your dignity back, your softness back, without handing it to people who weaponize ambiguity. And maybe they will feel that shift. Maybe one day the silence you chose instead of chasing will become the echo they cannot ignore. Maybe they will finally sit in the emptiness where your reassurance used to be and realize what they lost. Maybe they will reach for you with a sincerity they did not have before. But if that day comes, let them meet someone new, not the old you, not the you who begged, not the you who translated silence into hope, not the you who abandoned themselves to keep a fragile connection alive. Let them meet the version of you who can look love in the eye and say, "If you want access to me, come with honesty, come with consistency, come with emotional courage, come with hands that know how to hold, not just reach when lonely." And if they cannot, let them go. Not because it does not hurt, because it does. Not because you stopped caring, but because you started caring about yourself more. That is the ending nobody talks about enough. Self-worth does not always arrive as confidence. Sometimes it arrives as refusal. Refusal to chase. Refusal to explain your value. Refusal to keep knocking on doors that only open when you are walking away. And that refusal is holy. Because the moment you stop chasing an avoidant is often the moment you stop abandoning yourself. That is when your nervous system begins to settle. That is when the dopamine spell starts to break. That is when your body relearns that love is not supposed to feel like panic with a pulse. That is when your heart stops confusing uncertainty for intensity. And that is when you become dangerous in the most beautiful way. Because now you are no longer trying to be chosen by someone who fears choosing. Now you are choosing. Choosing peace over pursuit. Choosing truth over fantasy. Choosing reciprocity over longing. Choosing your own life over emotional starvation. And when you truly do that, something changes in your eyes. You stop looking like someone waiting to be loved. You start looking like someone who already knows they are.